What is up, YouTube? How y'all doing, man? As y'all can see, oh my God, Kid Cudi. I was trying to say Diddy. What's the boy name? Hey, y'all know Uncle Mike crazy, man. I'm 59 now, baby. I come back. I'm 59. One more year, I'll be 60 years. Oh, God damn, I'm young. I'm an old head. You can't. Hey, somebody put in the comments, they say, well, you shut up. You sound like an old granddad. You motherfucking right. I don't have no kids, y'all, so I ain't gonna have no grandkids. So, but I'm happy. I'm happy, man. I'm happy. I don't owe nobody nothing. I help people, I teach people, I educate people, and they look at me like Uncle Mike don't know what he doing. Yeah, okay. People said I'm living in my living in my mama's basement. That's right, I put all that out there. Yeah, I put all that out there. I mean, my mama's, I know one thing, when it's time to cut that damn grass out there, I say, I wish this was mama's house. Shoot, when it's time to get the Wi-Fi working again, I wish it was mama's house and I was some deadbeat. Well, mama, I don't know how to do nothing. That's why I'm living in your basement. Yeah, you know a deadbeat when you say, I had a girlfriend that tried to compare me to her deadbeat baby's daddy. Excuse me? I'm a winner, baby. Whenever I do something, I win. Watch me. Give me about 2 more months. I think they said 2 weeks. I'm a realist. It's going to take 2 months because you got to get all the bugs out. But I ain't going to say nothing. I'm keeping my mouth shut on this one because y'all take it slow. Hey, y'all tell them Uncle Mike told you so. Hit that subscribe button and hit that bell. Kid Cudi, y'all. Law and Order. Let's check it out. Sidebar.
Day 9 of 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦's federal trial saw bombshell testimony from rapper Kid Cudi, who alleged that Diddy retaliated against him after learning that Cudi was dating 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦, culminating in a supposed Molotov cocktail attack on Kid Cudi's car. The jury also heard disturbing accounts of abuse, secret aliases, and more details of an alleged pattern of intimidation. I'm going to be speaking with Law and Crimes reporter Elizabeth Milner to get the inside scoop on everything that the prosecution presented and everything the defense did in return. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Hey everybody, this is another Law and Crime legal alert. If you received Depo-Provera birth control shots and were later diagnosed with a brain or spinal tumor called meningioma, you may be eligible for a lawsuit. That's right, Morgan & Morgan is investigating claims that patients weren't properly warned about this risk. It's free to check, just takes a few minutes, and you don't pay unless they win. So scan the QR code on screen, click the link below, or head over to forthepeople.com/LCDepo to see if you qualify. Well, the federal trial of 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦 continued today, day 9, and we had explosive testimony. High-profile witness, none other than Kid Cudi himself. Yep, the rapper detailed a series of alleged retaliatory acts, including a Molotov cocktail attack on his car that he believes was orchestrated by Sean Combs because he claims Diddy found out that he was having relations with 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦. Right? Diddy's then girlfriend, on-again, off-again girlfriend. And the jury also heard even more disturbing allegations of alleged abuse against Ventura Fine. Hotel records revealed even more about Diddy's movements, possible attempts to even obscure his whereabouts. We can see where the prosecution's going. So we're going to get into all of this. I want to bring back on, here on Sidebar, Law and Crimes reporter Elizabeth Milner, who has been inside that courtroom for every day of this action, including today. So much to get into, Elizabeth. Before we even get into Kid Cudi, just tell me, we haven't talked about it in a while, what is the atmosphere in the courtroom? Who's showing up for Diddy? And overall, what's his demeanor like?
Yeah, so when Diddy comes inside the courtroom, he's still in kind of those muted colors. He's still wearing sweaters. He still has white button-ups underneath. He still wears the slacks. Of course, he can't have a belt or have shoelaces tied to his shoes or anything like that. But as far as today's appearance goes, today Diddy was in the gray sweater, white undershirt, and gray slacks. When he comes inside the courtroom, more often than not, he's hugging his attorneys. He's kind of doing like a hand clap with them, dabbing them up, that type of thing. Then he goes over to the defense table. He essentially takes his seat. Then he's starting to kind of essentially get to work, where he's writing down notes to his attorneys. He's speaking with them, more likely to talk about what's going to be happening today and that type of thing. But as far as just who's in the courtroom, it's still a different presence than it was on the first couple of days of trial. And that today specifically, we didn't see his sons, we didn't see his daughters inside the courtroom, nor did we see his mother. However, he did have family in there, and that was, of course, being his sister Keisha, who's been in the courtroom every single day of this week. But as far as other support goes, he did have one of his childhood friends inside that courtroom too, and then possibly some of the public who are just generally fans of Diddy. The other day, I actually saw somebody in the gallery who was sitting kind of towards the back row on the public side, giving Diddy kind of a heart, and then Diddy gave the heart back because he also sometimes goes by love. And so I think he kind of appreciates the public support when he's inside the courtroom, but for the most part, he's essentially getting inside that courtroom, getting to work, and anticipating what's going to be coming of another day of trial.
It's fascinating because we do a lunch show every day, and I would say the majority of people who watch and take the polls, they think the evidence supports his conviction. They think he's guilty. I think that's a fair estimation, a lot of what we're seeing. But you also have the support for Diddy online, on social media. I think people are quite split on this, and it does become a question how much of the evidence is actually swaying their opinion. I mean, at the end of the day, it only matters about the jury. And what did the jury hear today? So they heard from Kid Cudi. Okay, so when he shows up, by the way, I mean, he shows up in a leather jacket. He's wearing a white T-shirt underneath. There were pictures of him coming into the court smoking a cigarette. I mean, the guy is like a superstar. He comes right in, A-list celebrity. Now, people might be saying, what is his connection to this case? He did come up during Cassandra Ventura's testimony. So let's talk about this. He gets on the stand, okay? Two questions for you. First of all, let's take it piece by piece. What did he say about how he first got involved with Cassandra Ventura and what the relationship was like? And what was his overall demeanor like?
Well, when he was inside the courtroom, he was super casual. I will say, Jesse, that when when the government was calling his name as the next witness to come to the stand, I will say most of the people inside that courtroom, with the exception of the defense table, the prosecutors, everyone just turned around in their seat to get a look of Kid Cudi walking inside that courtroom. I'm telling you, everybody's back was turned to see him go inside that courtroom, take the witness stand. So there was a lot of anticipation for his testimony today, especially from us in the media, as well as probably people who are just general fans of Kid Cudi. So yes, to your point, Jesse, he is very casual even while on the stand, and he appeared casual while testifying today. He did have that black motorcycle jacket. He had his earring in. He had a white T-shirt on. He had jeans on, and just walked up to the witness stand as, you know, this was just any other day. But you could tell that this is something he doesn't do very often as far as, you know, testifying in a federal courtroom. And because he would say things like one-liners that were a little funny, and then he would say things like, "What'd you say now?" And it's just like, it was so casual while on the stand, and it was a little funny at times. But just as far as his involvement in the case, he's been a name that a lot of people have been hearing multiple times since testimony began, but they're not hearing Kid Cudi. What they're hearing is Scott Mescudi, his real name, his government name, I should say. But as far as his connection to the case, he and Cassie started off as friends together. Then they were going to start working together on this song. Diddy kind of try to set that up for them so that way Cassie could have a song with Kid Cudi. But the two became close, and the two I'm talking about, of course, being Kid Cudi and Cassie Ventura. They became close and romantically close as well, too. So as far as his involvement in the case, he said he dated Cassie back in 2011, something we knew from Cassie's testimony as well, too. And he said that he knew around that time that Cassie and Diddy had some problems, but he said that they weren't dating at that time. That's what his understanding was of their entire situation. So then as we're getting into the exhibits, they do show a photo of Capricorn Clark, and she kind of plays a role into it, and I'll get into that in just a second. But we see a photo exhibit of Capricorn Clark, a photo exhibit that we've seen a number of times. And Kid Cudi said that she was a friend of Cassie. Cassie's didn't even necessarily mention that she also worked for Diddy. I think he kind of slipped that in at the end, but really the focus was that she was a friend of Cassie's. Now we get into December of 2011. This is around the time that Cassie and Kid Cudi are dating one another. But police came to Kid Cudi's home because he had a break-in at his home. And it was really interesting kind of how he was just explaining from his side of the story, just about all the events that occurred. So he said that day actually started with a call from Cassie around 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. And Diddy had found out that the two were dating one another, and Cassie sounded really stressed on this phone call. So what Kid Cudi did was he went and picked up Cassie. He took her to a hotel, the Sunset Marquis in California, to make sure that she was in a safe place and away from Diddy, essentially, because she just sounded so stressed and nervous during this phone call. Kid Cudi, again, at the time didn't even realize that she was still kind of dealing with him, she being Cassie, still dealing with Diddy. And so Diddy had asked, I guess, for Kid Cudi's address, and I think this was a point that the defense later drove home, was that Cassie was the one who gave Diddy Kid Cudi's address. And so Kid Cudi said that he didn't know what Diddy was necessarily going to do. So when they were at the hotel, he actually spoke to 𝗟𝗡𝗡𝗡𝗡 on the phone. He said, as far as 𝗟𝗡𝗡𝗡𝗡𝗡's connection to it, that Capricorn hung out with Kid Cudi and Cassie a lot of times. That's what Kid Cudi had said on the stand. But during this particular phone call, Capricorn sounded scared and kind of on the verge of fear because Sean Combs, aka Diddy, one of his affiliates, who we don't know the name of this other person, and Capricorn Clark were actually at Kid Cudi's house while Kid Cudi wasn't even there. So that means that Diddy was inside Kid Cudi's home, according to Kid Cudi, during this incident. So Kid Cudi actually went home after he got this call from Capricorn Clark, and then we see an exhibit photo of Kid Cudi's old home, a home where the break-in had occurred, and we see the front door gate. And he describes this neighborhood as like quiet and family-oriented, not thinking that break-ins really happen in this particular neighborhood. And so he actually ends up getting on the phone with Diddy while he's driving back and rushing back to his home. And Kid Cudi, he, was very casual on the stand, and by casual, he also used a lot of profanity on the stand as well too. So he said, "Mother effer, you know what I mean? Are you in my house?" Diddy responded, "I just want to talk to you." And these are Kid Cudi's words. It's not like we heard a voice note or anything like that. This is what Kid Cudi had recalled about this entire situation. But Diddy had responded, "I'm here waiting for you," here being at Kid Cudi's home. And surprisingly, and this is something Kid Cudi had said, that Diddy sounded pretty calm on the phone while this was happening. So he gets home, he sees the security cameras aren't adjusted the way that they normally are. They're turned down as if somebody had moved them. They're turned in the opposite angle. And Kid Cudi said he wasn't the one that moved those security cameras. So when he got home, his suspicion alarms just ran and ran and ran, because he said that gifts were open on his kitchen counter. It was stuff from Chanel. He said his dog was in the bathroom at this time, and his dog normally, just like a lot of our pets, just runs free around the home whenever the pet parent isn't at home or isn't present. But his dog in this particular incident was shut behind a bathroom door. And he had this dog for a 2-year time period, even prior to this incident. And he noticed that his dog's behavior started to change after this break-in, that the dog became jittery and was on edge all the time. And Kid Cudi got back into his car and called Diddy because he was looking for him. He wanted to fight him. He was that mad, he says. And so after the phone call, or after he was trying to look for Diddy to essentially possibly beat him up, Kid Cudi said he kind of thought about the situation, the reality and gravity of what could be another situation. So what he ended up doing was he actually called the police. He returned home, and by the time he had returned home after looking for Diddy, the police were there, and he had filed a police report about this break-in incident.
And what's interesting about it is, because I think obviously it goes to a number of factors. So the idea that Capricorn Clark made the allegation, right, that she was taken by Sean Combs and an affiliate to Kid Cudi's place, that goes to what? Kidnapping, one of the alleged predicate crimes for racketeering. The more that establishes that he was, breaking into his home, goes to this pattern of criminal activity. Again, the jury has to digest the fact that Sean Combs was a leader of a criminal enterprise for racketeering. And I think that this is essential for it. But now we go into something else, right? Now we go into the allegation that Sean Combs had blown up Kid Cudi's car. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, it was something that we have kind of known about for a while now, right? Because it was actually laid out in Cassie's federal lawsuit, which we know was filed one day, settled the next day, back in November of 2023. But as far as this arson goes, this Molotov cocktail inside Kid Cudi's Porsche, this happened on January 9th of 2016. So it was just about a week or two after he and Cassie had even broken up. And so he said that he was over at his ex-girlfriend's sister's house at this time, and he got a call from his dog's babysitter, or his dog sitter at the time, and got a call that his car was on fire and it caught fire. And so Kid Cudi on the stand said, she told me my car was on fire. I immediately went to my house. So he gets to his house, he sees his car in the driveway, and then that's when we see a bunch of exhibit photos. And this was kind of the first time I think that we've really seen just the damage of the car and what it really entailed in the aftermath of this Molotov cocktail being lodged into Kid Cudi's car. So we saw photos of the damaged car. We saw kind of a cut open roof from the Molotov cocktail. The roof was blown out. And according to Kid Cudi, the person who took those photos wasn't Kid Cudi himself. It was actually Kid Cudi's best friend, Chip, who had taken these photos. And so we see more exhibit photos of the burnt driver's side door, with all the smoke damage. We see a hole in the roof again. We see the damage to the driver's side again with the burned seats. And then Kid Cudi said that when he arrived home, he did see the damage, but he also saw the burnt bottle, aka the Molotov cocktail, on the ground outside of the car. He said it was kind of lodged on the driver's side of the car. And he said when he had arrived home as well too, that police were at his home and his car wasn't even able to be repaired after the fire. And he was asked about his reaction by prosecutor Emily Johnson, and his reaction was, "What the FUCK?" And so that was just kind of another moment of Kid Cudi, even though it's a serious situation, but still coming off just relatively casual just about the entire incident. And I thought what was interesting is because right after Kid Cudi gave his reaction, we went to a little break, that Diddy's demeanor really kind of, it was very just kind of, from what I could tell, just kind of emotionless. Like he didn't seem like he thought it was funny or anything like that, which was kind of a stark reaction from when the previous witness, that being George Kaplan, took the stand, where Diddy was laughing at some of the testimony, all of that stuff. But with Kid Cudi specifically today, Jesse, Diddy had little to no reaction from what I could tell from where I was sitting, just about everything, because when Kid Cudi's kind of alleging that this might have been at the hands of Sean Combs, I think, you know, Sean Combs knows that the jury is kind of listening very closely to these types of allegations.
It's damning testimony, because not only does it help support, as I mentioned, kidnapping, then it helps support arson, right? Arson, one of the other underlying predicate crimes for racketeering. Prosecution just needs to prove at least two. Now talk to me about this. Kid Cudi confronted Diddy, right?
There was definitely a confrontation that happened shortly after the Molotov cocktail was inside Kid Cudi's car. And I thought, just kind of circling back really quick, Jesse, is that he was actually asked, do you think that this was accidental, or do you think this was intentional? And Kid Cudi said that he had believed that this was intentional. And so what ended up happening is that he said that Diddy was reaching out to him and texting him and calling him a number of times. And Kid Cudi was just so furious, essentially, around this time, that he just wasn't answering. He wasn't responding, but he just wanted essentially the drama to stop. And so he ended up reaching out to Diddy after his car caught fire, because he had told Diddy that this is getting out of hand. And so what ended up happening was 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦, a name that we have been hearing about a number of times, one of Diddy's then security guards, and then Kid Cudi's manager, Dennis, had set up this meeting so that way Diddy and Kid Cudi could talk and hash things out. And so this meeting happened in Los Angeles at Soho House, something that they actually have here in New York City as well too. And Kid Cudi had said when he arrived, he met with 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦, who escorted him up into a room. And this is where there was kind of a little light moment of laughter, but maybe from Diddy's point of view, he didn't think it was that funny. But Kid Cudi said while on the stand that when he got into this room where he was supposed to meet Diddy, that Diddy was just kind of staring off, and he looked like a Marvel supervillain, a point that a lot of people in the courtroom were laughing about, as well as some of the jurors. But did Diddy particularly think it's funny? Possibly not. But Kid Cudi had said that Diddy's demeanor for the most part appeared calm during this meetup. And Kid Cudi said that was actually a little off-putting to him because he said it was weird that he was acting so calm. He said that later Cassie ended up arriving to this meeting and that he was a little upset with Cassie because she didn't think that she was going to go back to him. And so during this meeting, Kid Cudi said that he didn't have conflict with anyone else at this time. So I think he kind of pointed it at this being kind of Sean Combs' fault that his car got blown up essentially. But he said after this meeting and after they kind of talked things through and hashed things out, that Kid Cudi and Diddy stood up, they shook each other's hand, and Kid Cudi said to Diddy, "What are we going to do about my car?" And Diddy responded, "I don't know what you're talking about." And Kid Cudi said that he had said this kind of relatively calmly. But after this meeting, there were no more break-ins in Kid Cudi's home. There were no more car bombs lodged into his car or Molotov cocktails. And after, he didn't see Diddy again until a few years later, surprisingly, at Soho House once again. And Diddy surprisingly apologized later on. And Kid Cudi had said that after he received the apology years later from Diddy, he said he kind of made peace with the entire situation. And so that was kind of the wrap up of his direct testimony. Obviously, with the cross, there were some holes poked in it here and there, but we'll definitely talk about that.
Before we even get into the cross, what exactly was the apology? What exactly did Combs apologize for?
From Kid Cudi's testimony today, he said that he was at Soho House, again, this being years after the Molotov cocktail, that he ran into Diddy there and Diddy was with his daughters. And essentially Diddy had said that he was just sorry for everything, not going into much detail, not a point where he said, "I was the one who had did this, I'm the one behind it," nothing like that. But essentially he just said that the apology was pretty quick, brief, and that he had moved on from the situation afterwards.
Did Kid Cudi testify about Diddy's alleged abuse of Cassie?
Well, that really was kind of touched upon during the cross-examination, the cross being presented by Brian Still, who we all know very well here at Law and Crime. But as far as what Kid Cudi said during the cross-examination, he said that Cassie never told him about sexual abuse. He said that he was in love with Cassie while the two were together, and that Kid Cudi actually never saw Diddy hit Cassie around this time. But another point that I think Brian Still was trying to point out during this testimony, during the cross-examination, is that Diddy never interrupted Kid Cudi and Cassie when they were together. And Kid Cudi said, "Yeah, that's pretty true." Then they started kind of talking about the burner phones and whether or not Cassie had told Kid Cudi that she had multiple phones, because while Cassie was on the stand, she did own up to the fact that she did have a burner phone, so that way Diddy wouldn't get mad or angry at her. And so when asked, "Did you tell the government that Cassie had multiple phones?" Kid Cudi said, "I can't remember, but if I said it, I said it." A little moment where people are laughing in the courtroom. But then they kind of ended on the cross-examination as far as just again driving the point home that this, and I hate to say it this way, that it might have been Cassie's fault for pointing Diddy to his home, because Cassie was the one that gave Diddy Kid Cudi's address, according to testimony today. So I think as far as just the big points of the cross-examination, it felt like they were kind of turning this to Cassie's fault, and this was Cassie's the reason that this had happened, because she was the one that gave the address to Diddy.
And also trying to say, you know, she was the one who played you, like she played Combs, like she's the manipulative one, she's the one who can't be trusted. And I think that's something that they've been building up a lot, talking about the her filing a lawsuit against Combs and that she might have ulterior motives and, you know, the burner phones. And that could be a dangerous strategy, but it's an interesting strategy nonetheless. And, you know, focusing on the fact that she said she never told Kid Cudi that she was sexually abused, which is a key component of the prosecution's case. And I also understand they asked a little bit more about, was there further investigation into the, essential firebombing of your car? He was also asked about DNA, I think. And so I could see where they were going with the cross-examination, but the points were well heard by Kid Cudi's testimony. So now I want to move into the other testimony. And I actually want to backtrack, because the day started with the continued testimony of George Kaplan, right? Diddy's former assistant, very important in a racketeering case. If you're going to be talking about racketeering in a criminal enterprise, and that Combs used his businesses and his resources and his employees and his staff to further criminal activity and cover things up, you got to get the inner circle to testify. Now, my understanding is he testified about some specific violent incidents, right? What did he describe?
Yeah, so George Kaplan, when we see him inside the courtroom today, he was wearing an olive-colored green suit. He had no tie on. He's kind of looking around waiting for the jury. But as far as just my impression of him while he was on the stand, you could tell that he had still had love for Diddy, who used to be his former boss. And it was just kind of an interesting moment. But he had recalled just two incidents about why he essentially quit his job. And the first one happened in 2015, where he was on Diddy's private jet because, again, Diddy has a lot of money, so he's able to have his own private jet. And they were flying to Las Vegas because Diddy had a club appearance during this time. And so they're on Diddy's private jet. It's not just Diddy and Cassie, but there are other people there too. George was there, security was there, management was there, and then other team members of Diddy's were there as well too. So George said that he was sitting kind of at a table towards the back of the plane, but Cassie and Diddy themselves were behind this partition kind of also towards the back of the plane. And then all of a sudden George heard glass breaking. So he said when he had heard this glass breaking, he saw Cassie on her back on the floor and Diddy was above her. Diddy was holding this whiskey rock glass, and George said that there was tremendous commotion, and Cassie was screaming, essentially saying, "Isn't anyone seeing this?" And George said that he did nothing in this situation. He didn't de-escalate the situation. He didn't try to help Cassie. He just looked away. Cassie said, again, "Isn't anyone seeing this?" And nobody on that plane did anything to help her. So George said he was around 23 around the time when he was asked why he didn't do anything. He said he was young. He couldn't believe that he was working for an icon around this time. And again, just kind of he throughout his testimony today was really just kind of driving home the point that Diddy was such an icon, gave him his first major opportunity, and he was just so proud to be working with Diddy around this time. And so he said that he was trying to accomplish something professionally, and by speaking up and speaking out against his boss, that he wouldn't be able to accomplish this. And so Diddy told Cassie during this incident to stay in the back of the plane. Nobody again checked on her. The flight was about an hour long, according to George, and Diddy again going to that club appearance. So what George's role was in the situation after was he was to bring Cassie to the club later on. He said he didn't see any bruising on Cassie in this particular incident, but did recall another incident where she was bruised in 2015. In that particular incident, Cassie was crying on the bed. She had bruising above her right eyebrow. And George said that he was in the room for less than 3 seconds before Diddy went in, and Diddy asked him to get him ointments like a witch hazel cream to kind of get rid of the bruising. But as far as the plane incident specifically, he said that he didn't see bruising on Cassie during that incident, and nor did anyone help her during that incident. But his role after the fact was to get Cassie help get Cassie from the hotel essentially to the club so that way she could meet Diddy during his club appearance and appear that everything was all good after this pretty shocking incident.
Well, I'll tell you a few things that I take away from that. Obviously, whenever you have an assistant or a member of the inner circle allegedly helping this alleged criminal conduct, it goes towards the racketeering charge, conspiracy to commit the racketeering activity, right? The agreement between Combs and others. He can't do it by himself. But what I think is really telling, and it also came out earlier on in the trial when you had Dawn Richard testify that she witnessed Cassie being punched by Diddy in front of celebrities and they did nothing. I think it goes to the idea why Cassie Ventura Fine never spoke up, why she didn't fight back, why she didn't leave. Because the allegation would be, if these people are not stepping in, how on earth could she feel protected to do anything? I mean, if Combs, it shows the power of him. He's able to do these things and nobody does anything, nobody steps in. What do you expect her to do? Now, I'm not saying that. I think that's the prosecution, an argument they're going to move forward with. But again, this is just another symptom of that. That's another characteristic of it. Real quick, on cross-examination, though, did they question him about the fact that this wasn't for the benefit of a criminal enterprise, right? It wasn't for the benefit of Sean Combs' businesses, because I think that's a key component there. If you're saying there's a criminal enterprise, everything that they do has to benefit. Everything they do has to benefit the Combs businesses or Combs himself. Didn't they get into that a little bit?
Well, as far as the cross-examination goes, I just got to tell you, Jesse, sometimes with the defense and their questioning, I never know where they're kind of going with this. Because even during cross, which was done by 𝗟𝗡𝗡𝗞𝗦, there was just a lot of, it felt like ego boosting of Diddy and just the role that he had essentially in this world before all the allegations came out, before his arrest, before the indictment, and even before the trial, because there was just a lot of talk just about his career around the time, how he was a mogul, he had handled all these different businesses and clothing and lifestyle and television. And so there are a lot of times where they were just essentially talking about Diddy's businesses, and Diddy seemed to kind of really enjoy this testimony where they're just kind of reminding the jury just the impact that Diddy's businesses had, including just diversity and how that was important to Diddy, and how George Kaplan really was proud of his work while working with Diddy under Combs Enterprise at the time. And as far as just getting into just some of the responsibilities that he had, and that he had a checklist for everything, and he was asked about the other members of Diddy's staff, including the CFO of Combs Enterprise. He was asked about Diddy's friend who worked at Revolt. He was asked about the CEO of Revolt. He was asked about James Cruz, Diddy's manager, and just the roles that they had played in kind of helping Diddy just essentially throughout his career and get to him to where he is, or where he was at that point in time. They touched base a little bit about Christina Korum and how that George and Christina had this professional relationship, and that he essentially learned to do the job from Christina Korum's guidance. That was something that he had said on the stand today. He said he did speak to Christina about the violence, and she expressed sadness when he would hear that Diddy was essentially physically assaulting his girlfriends, but she had no endorsement of Diddy's behavior, which I thought was an interesting point they said under cross, mainly because Christina Korum worked with Diddy until essentially just recently. And so George said that it was really sad that these incidents had happened, because there was another incident with Gina, another girlfriend of Diddy, who Cassie said that who Cassie had said was kind of a problem throughout their relationship, because Diddy was dating both of them at the same time. Cassie was like, okay, you cannot see her anymore, and Diddy kept on seeing her. And then there was an incident at Diddy's home where Diddy was throwing apples at Gina, and that was another reason that George wanted to leave the job. And so he called these incidents horrible, but he said he didn't necessarily want to leave, but I think because of these incidents of violence that George said that he didn't want to do it anymore. And so then he was asked about Diddy's temper and how his temper didn't help his businesses. George was kind of pointing out that he had never worked harder in his life than he had worked with Diddy around that time period. The defense asked, was that a good or a bad thing? George said, I can't really answer that. They brought back the water incident where George was asked to get Diddy the specific alkaline water. He filled half of the gallon with water, or he filled half a gallon with one bottle, another half gallon, and then combined the bottle. Diddy didn't like it, threatened his job at that time, but didn't necessarily threaten George himself. And so as far as just the temper issue, George did admit the temper was kind of a lot for him to kind of handle around this time, because he's in his early 20s while he's working for Diddy at this time. But then there were points during the cross where he said that Diddy was kind of inspirational, and that even to this day, or maybe possibly prior to his arrest, that George would wish Diddy well. He'd always tell him happy birthday. He invited Diddy to his wedding. Diddy didn't respond. And then just yesterday, just a little fun fact is they were talking about Biggie Smalls, Notorious B.I.G., and they were talking about how most of Diddy's staff members on that day, which was yesterday, May 21st, that most of those staff members would actually get that day off because it's Biggie's birthday. So when they're talking about Biggie, Diddy's smiling inside the courtroom. He's kind of nodding at George. He seems a lot more jovial than he was, especially when Kid Cudi was testifying. But it seemed like, as far as from George's standpoint, really the only reason he left the job was because of these incidents of physical violence.
Yeah.
However, he didn't necessarily step in to help with those acts of violence either.
See, I think that's key for the defense. If they want to say that his temper, what he was doing, was not to benefit himself, was not to benefit the criminal enterprise, this wasn't a good thing. So it kind of defeats the prosecution's argument that all of this was beneficial. All of this was for a common purpose. All of this was, a good thing for the criminal enterprise. If you could think about a mafia organization, right? So if they were engaged in a series of crimes that brought the organization prestige, helped their reputation, brought in more money, you can understand how that makes sense and is digestible for a jury. Here, they're saying everything Combs was doing really didn't help this organization, really didn't help this criminal enterprise. I can see what they were saying here. Okay, so now it brings us to the testimony of a makeup artist, okay? What were some of the chilling details from this makeup artist? Because when I first heard that she was being called to the stand, and I understand a makeup artist for Cassie, the first thing I think is, oh, did she see injuries, and were these injuries that she covered up with makeup? Talk to us about what the makeup artist said.
So 𝗗𝗢 Morales is a makeup artist, and she's been one who has been kind of vocal in recent interviews just about working with Cassie for a number of years, but also in that same respect, also working with Diddy as well. And so she had mentioned one incident. It was Grammy weekend of 2010, so a little while ago, and there was this party at Prince's house, so another Prince mention. She said that she had seen Cassie earlier in that day. They were at the, but they ended up going back to the Beverly Hills Hotel. 𝗗𝗢 had fallen asleep, and then all of a sudden she wakes up and she hears this kind of commotion going on. Diddy somehow gets inside this hotel room. He comes in and says, where the F is she? And she being Cassie. He was looking for Cassie. So he walked into the bedroom, and all of a sudden 𝗗𝗢 could just hear screaming and yelling, and 𝗗𝗢 said that she didn't know what to do, something that a lot of people have testified to as far as just what's their reaction when something like this happens, and a lot of them just freeze and don't necessarily know what to do. Then all of a sudden, next thing she knew, Diddy had stormed out of the bedroom and just essentially left the hotel, and she didn't see any type of injuries to Diddy. However, when she saw Cassie, she saw a swollen eye, she saw knots, she saw a busted lip, and then 𝗗𝗢 said they picked up Cassie's stuff. She took Cassie over to her house, which was just about a mile away from this hotel, and Cassie had stayed with 𝗗𝗢 for a few days at her home. 𝗗𝗢 explained that she actually had a doctor friend who came over and kind of evaluated Cassie to see if everything was okay with her, because she said that she was worried that Cassie might have had a concussion. But she said Cassie did also have her stomach and her ribs checked out, and the doctor actually suggested for them to go to the emergency room. They didn't go to the emergency room because 𝗗𝗢 said around that time she was afraid of Diddy, and that at the time she had feared for her life. But then there was kind of an objection. That objection was sustained, and so they kind of brought that back in again, where 𝗗𝗢 explained she didn't call the police because she feared for her life. And so afterwards, when Cassie left 𝗗𝗢's house, they didn't acknowledge the situation or anything. 𝗗𝗢 and Cassie specifically didn't acknowledge what happened. 𝗗𝗢 and Diddy never spoke about this incident. However, this was an incident that 𝗗𝗢 Morales did talk about in TV interviews, because she was asked about that under direct examination. But 𝗗𝗢 explained that she wasn't paid to do the interviews. However, she did provide a photo to a news outlet of herself and Kim Porter, and said that she was paid $1,000 for those photo rights. And I think that the government tried to get ahead of this because they knew that the defense was going to be asking about this during her cross-examination. But as far as this particular incident in 2010, it seemed that it really impacted 𝗗𝗢, but that was the one incident that she had spoken about while she testified today.
Yeah, I knew the defense was going to have a field day with that, because the idea that she kept doing the media rounds and was getting paid for the photos, it would suggest she has a financial and reputational incentive to be a part of this story, to maybe go forward with these allegations, goes to her credibility. The final witness I want to talk to you about is this hotel manager, okay? I believe the name is Frederick 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦, apologies if I mispronounced the name. But my understanding is this person revealed, Diddy allegedly used aliases to check into hotels, right? What were the names that Diddy allegedly used, and why does it matter?
Yeah, so when Frederick 𝗗𝗎𝗓 came into the courtroom today, I didn't necessarily know where his testimony would necessarily go. All we knew about him was that he was an employee at a hotel, but didn't know where that would kind of lead to. And so it was just a lot of exhibits with a lot of just kind of logs and documents just about everything. So some of the names that we had seen from the exhibits are just names related to Sean Combs. We saw that the name under the reservation would be under Orion Lopez, and we saw so many of the name changes attached to that profile of Ryan Lopez, also for Sean Combs. And so we saw names including Jackie Star. We saw Sean Combs. We saw Sean Combs be changed to Jackie Star. We saw Jackie Star be changed to Sean Combs, and then it was later changed to Ryan Lopez. And then we saw check-in logs. We saw checkout logs as well too. And there was just a lot of just quick documents that we were seeing, and they were just so small to read. But a lot of the big names that we saw, again, being Jackie Star, Sean Combs, Ryan Lopez, Lopez, Frank Black, a name that we know that Diddy used as an alias a number of times in a lot of other different circumstances. And so those were the big names that we saw in just a lot of those documents with a very small imprint on them. Also, another interesting thing that we saw, Jesse, was some of the profile notes. And those were essentially just the long list of notes attached to the profiles, normally about kind of the usuals that the guests would have when they checked into these hotels. But for this specific profile note that we saw things like always spill candle wax on everything and uses excessive amounts of oil, but didn't specify what type of oil, just said excessive amounts of oil. Place the room out of order upon departure for deep cleaning. Please authorize an extra $1,000 when guest stays with us to cover any room damages. And then we saw that if there needed to be credit card approval, it had to go through Eli Maroon, Dave Shirley, or Christina Coram. And so those three names specifically were Diddy's former assistants that we now know to be. But I just thought it was interesting as far as those specific profile notes, just about the candles, just about the oil. But there is also amenities too that were bought, I guess, at this hotel, such as fruit, such as water, such as chocolate, truffled chocolate as well. Champagne and birthday cake. And so I think what the government was trying to do, because there was no cross-examination to this witness, was just kind of explain just what all goes into the hotel from the hotel staff's point of view, as far as what hotel staffers can normally expect whenever Sean Combs or his other aliases check into one of their rooms.
What a day. What a day. I mean, if people thought that week 2 of this trial was going to be slow, they were wrong. So now we go into what's next. What is next in this case, Elizabeth?
Yeah. So one of the one things I love that the government always does is tell us what witnesses we're expecting towards the end of court. So this is normally a time where the jury has already gone. Some other people kind of leave the courtroom too, but I always kind of stick around to know what are we going to expect next. But what we can expect on Tuesday, because a lot of us are going to enjoy this very nice long weekend, myself included, and some of the jurors, and hopefully you too, Jesse. But
Monday's
what we can
a
expect
holiday.
on Tuesday is another probably bombshell day, because guess who's testifying? Capricorn Clark. And Capricorn Clark used to work for Diddy. She was involved in a way with the whole Molotov cocktail situation with Kid Cudi. So we're expecting to hear from her just about everything that she witnessed during her time with Diddy, and even being friends with Cassie. The other witnesses that are going to be called after Capricorn Clark are going to be, I guess, an officer with LAPD as well as an officer with LAFD. So maybe it's going to be kind of in a continuation of the Kid Cudi allegations and the Molotov cocktail and possibly that. But they didn't go into, they didn't specify what the officers or even the firefighter might possibly talk about. But as far as Capricorn Clark goes, it's a witness I'm definitely kind of anxious to hear from.
Again, kidnapping, arson, these underlying predicate crimes for the overall racketeering charge, a charge that carries life in prison. I'm not surprised they might be focusing so much attention on those two potential underlying crimes. Elizabeth Milner, thank you so much for your great reporting today and this week. As always, provide our eyes and ears about what's happening in that courtroom, because with no cameras, no audio equipment, you kind of paint the picture for us. Really appreciate it as always.
Excuse me.
Thanks, Jesse.
And that is all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.
I can't wait. So Monday, I'm assuming, I got to look it up, y'all. Monday is a holiday, so they're not going to have court Monday. They're going to start on Tuesday, which gives me more time to prepare so I can go hit on up there. Yeah. So Monday is a holiday, so that can give me an excuse to go Tuesday. Hey, I'm going to get on up out of here. I will see y'all Tuesday at the courthouse. Well, you know, we're going to put out more videos and all that good stuff. Y'all take it light, take it slow. Tell them Uncle Mike told you so. Peace out.